and it's so indicative of the industry. That doesn't mean that every broker-dealer is like this, but as you well know, and it's has to be extremely clear to you, broker-dealers are regulated under FINRA. It is a self-imposed organization. In other words, in my opinion, the fox looking over the chicken coop. But there was a study done recently of the financial advisors who had been cited for misconduct. And this was done by a professor at the University of Chicago who then completed the study. Let me just get into it. The study honed in on 6 of the 23 categories disclosed in what is called the broker check. That's a FINRA database. And the database, of course, is overseen by FINRA. What it does is it looks at investment professionals who were cited for arbitration or a civil suit, not just cited, but it resulted in arbitration or a civil judgment for the customer. So this is where they were, found guilty, if you were, before their peers. I'll show you in a moment. About half the advisors found to have committed misconduct were fired, which is 44, but 44% of the advisors did leave their job, but they were then hired by another firm, according to the paper. Many of the advisors end up moving firms that have higher rates of misconduct than their previous employer did, and they became repeated offenders. The study found that prior offenders are 5 times as likely to engage in new misconduct as the average financial advisor. Now, I want to be careful to say, in any business, there are going to be the bad apples, but it's interesting to see some results here. This is the conclusion by John Coffey at the Columbia Law School in New York. He says, this is eye-opening and suggests not only that some firms have high tolerance for misconduct on the part of the employee, but their business model, and I actually know a broker-dealer that does this. Their business model is to attract a broker who can generate high revenue at the cost of repeated disciplinary violations. FINRA needs to focus on this. I remember years ago, a very good friend of mine, still a good friend, worked for Revlon, having nothing to do with the investment industry. And one day in the paper, this is like 30 years ago, I saw where Revlon had been fined millions of dollars. I forgot what the regulatory basis agency was, but they'd been fined millions of dollars, to which I hurried and called my friend. I said, Alan, have you seen the paper today? I thought he was going to die, He says, no, what does it say? And I says, Revlon has been fined, I forgot what it was, $25 million, or some large number. And I thought he was just going to faint on the floor. And he said, oh, yeah, we knew about that. He said, we made over $1 billion on it. And so, paying $25 million, but making $1 billion is well worth doing. And tomorrow the paper is in the waste paper basket. And so I wonder if there's actually broker-dealers out there that are looking for high revenue people. When I was head of a national record-keeping firm, one of our most successful wholesalers we had to let go. He brought in so much money. He was so successful, but after warning and warning, he still would not do it the right way, and finally we had to let him go. And so these aren't easy decisions, but I want to show this to you because I think this is shocking. Oppenheimer, as a broker-dealer, nearly 20% of their 2,275 advisors have at least one, not just citation, but had to be paid out or disciplined. 20%, 1 out of 5. Wells Fargo, 15% of their 1,797. UBS, 15% of their 12,000. And going on, Raymond James, nearly 14% of their 5,000, and on down the line. Now, oops, what did it do? There I go. Okay. Now, there's some that have done quite a good job and should be praised for it. Morgan Stanley with their nearly 4,000 or less than 1%. And I assume a first-time offender, depending on what it was, should get another chance. Goldman Sachs, less than 1%. And well, Prudential, you can read down, is nearly 2%. Wells Fargo Securities, which is different, is 1.7, and Pershing 1.7. So there are some good ones out here, but this should never be tolerated in an industry, and people wonder, you know, why they need someone like fiduciary doctors. So we'll leave that for now, but I just wanted you to be aware of it. Now, what I want to do is go into the meat for today, and this is the Advisory Council on Employee Welfare and Pension Plans. This is a keeper for you. This is going to have so much meat that I believe, at least I use it as a reference. And so these are all, this is a summary from the Advisory Council, which gave a report to the Honorable Thomas E. Perez, United States Secretary of Labor, and the title of it was Outsourcing Employee Benefit Plan Services. And they are going to do, I think, a superb job, an excellent job of going in and proving why outsourcing is legal. Of course, Department of Labor knows that. But more significantly, why it is needed, and more significant to us, especially as it relates to the 402 name fiduciary. Though in the study, they are talking about all outsourced service providers, TPA, record keeper, investment professional, RISA 338, RISA 321, RISA 403, etc., CPA auditor. But they hone in on RISA 402 because as you're out there, I just got a call the other day from one of our newer ministerial agents, and they said, oh, we went out to close a plan, and the advisor came back and said it was illegal for the plan sponsor to allocate, or he said delegate, the 402 responsibilities. Well, he didn't know what he was talking about. So this is a paper that I think you want to keep. So they start off, as Department of Labor always does, and rightfully so, is they establish their authority under RISA 512 to advise the Secretary of Labor on matters related to welfare and pension benefits. This is their authority as a welfare council. By the way, the authority for the Department of Labor comes under RISA 521. And in essence, when I taught CPA auditors yesterday, in essence, but we'll wait for our next residency training, but in essence, it says that the Department of Labor can do anything necessary to protect the plan sponsor and their beneficiaries. But this was the right for the Welfare Council to be able to give their advice to the DOL, and that comes under Section 512. So let's go into what this is about. This report is the outsourcing of employee benefit plan services. Again, what you do, what we do, with a particular focus on the functions that have historically been handled by the employer. Historically, the employer has defaulted to be the 402 name fiduciary, has defaulted to be the 316 fiduciary, administrative fiduciary, has defaulted to be the trustee. And so they're saying the primary purpose of this report is to discuss outsourcing of employee benefits that historically employers have kept, such as the name fiduciary. So they're going to use that as the emphasis of their report. Well, they're going to lay legal background. Under ERISA 402A, it provides that every employee benefit plan must, through the governing of the plan document, provide for one or more named fiduciaries. So again, remember I told you that this is about outsourcing. It's about their endorsement of outsourcing, but particularly named fiduciaries. And they go on to say that the named fiduciary has the authority to control and manage the operation and administration of the plan. Well, why do we know that? We know that because of ERISA 321A little I. And so they go on to say that, this is a quote from Professor Midell of the University of Nebraska. ERISA does not require that the employer act as the named fiduciary, and this responsibility can be outsourced. So if anyone asks you, this is a report to the Department of Labor from the Department of Labor Advisory Council. Can it be outsourced? Absolutely it can be outsourced. And remember, we outsource through ERISA 405. That is the outsourcing of the process. So what is their executive summary? That's kind of like giving the end of the book before you know, the conclusion. The council examined the role of outsourcing plays in helping plan sponsors and plan fiduciaries meet the increasing complex task of managing and administrating their employee benefit plan. Even the Department of Labor says, we know it's more complicated than it was in 1974. We know it's more complicated than it was in 2006. We understand that. Through outsourcing, the plan sponsor can gain access to expertise. How in the world does that plan sponsor know how to do 164 diagnostic procedures? I remember years ago, my dad was a pretty good mechanic. He didn't work as a mechanic. And as time went on, I had the kind of dad who could just fix anything. And I didn't get that gene. But anyway, later on in life, I thought because he was getting older that he didn't fix his cars anymore, because he rather liked getting out there and getting his hands greasy. And I said to him one day, I said, how come you don't fix your cars anymore? And I expected him to say, well, you know, I'm getting too old to do it, or I have enough money to pay for it now. And he says, oh, with the computers now in cars, I have no idea how to do it. Well, think about ERISA. I'm using it both literally and symbolically, didn't have computers in '74, specialized computers. And so today, the plans have become, they are not for novices. They're for experts and the technology and the economy of scale. We've said to you before that we have self-audited over 25% of our plans, and we save on an average 38 basis points per plan. Hear that well, 38 basis points per plan. Not only do we provide efficiency, and the average plan improves its investments by over 2.5% a year, and it provides safety to the plan. And so here the advisory council is saying, look, ERISA's got too complicated, and by outsourcing we improve expertise, technology, economy of scale, and we reduce costs. And that is true with fiduciary doctors. They go on to say outsourcing also permits a plan sponsor to focus on their core business rather than managing employee benefit plans. This growth in outsourcing is in part results of the ERISA fiduciary framework. What are they saying? Title I, which permits the assignment of fiduciary functions along different parties. Remember, we've said before that whenever you, under ERISA 405, are having a lateral move in changing who is going to take care of something. That is called an allocation. And when you allocate to the ERISA 402 fiduciary, or when you do it, you are allocating to the 402 fiduciary. Every other change in ERISA is delegation, because it's a move below. We're not saying beneath, but that's called delegation. So you allocate to the 402, you delegate to the plan sponsor, you delegate to the record keeper, you delegate to the 403 trustee, etc. And so they're clearly saying that look, we not only think it should happen, it must happen. So now they go into reasons for outsourcing. For many sponsors, the tasks associated with maintaining an employee benefit plan has become unmanageable. Now, as TPAs out there, this is the story you can tell. This is from the Advisory Council of the Department of Labor. Plan sponsors are turning to outsourcing, so they may devote more time and energy to their primary responsibilities of running the business. In addition to allowing the plan sponsor to focus on their core business, the most frequent cited benefits of outsourcing are cost and economy of scale. We say to every plan sponsor, we're not going to terminate your service providers, but we are going to look for economy of scale, or in other words, reasonableness under ERISA 408B2. We must do that. We have a plan right now that is paying between $350,000 to $400,000 more than it ought to. And the investments are in the third and fourth quartile. This is a huge plan, costing the plan overall over $2 million a year. Now, are the investment professionals bad people? No. Do they know anything about fiduciary? No. Do they make more money than you and I'll ever see? Yes. But until a Title I fiduciary expert came in and looked under covers, these things can't be found. Access to technology. Under 408B2, as I talked to the CPA auditors yesterday, I said, do you know that if 408B2 isn't done properly, it is a disqualifying event under the 5500 Schedule G? Well, no, we didn't know that. They mean to do well. And so and not only stage one is you must get the report, the 408B2. Stage two is the responsible fiduciary must analyze it. Stage three, they must benchmark it. Yesterday on the phone and a webcast with Tom Bick, we were looking at a plan, and I said to Tom, Tom, to benchmark this, how much time did this take you? And he's very familiar with this particular system. He said about 3 hours. And as we talked, so not only does it cost quite a bit of money for us to have this independent benchmarking, but just the time to do it and know what to put in there. Yesterday afternoon, we introduced ourselves to a brand new plan, and the investment professionals seemed like a wonderful person. And they had got a report from the record keeper about, and he was quite proud of it, the funds that they had in the lineup. As the 402 fiduciary, we had to do our own investigation. And I don't know that I have ever seen a group of core funds as bad as these. I don't believe for a moment that this investment professional didn't want to do what's right. It's an oxymoron. The word investment professional, he knows nothing about really investments. And so the access to technology that they don't have. And of course, the access to legal and compliance expertise and the ability to limit their fiduciary risk. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4. I will tell you, for the life of me, I cannot understand why any plan sponsor would remain as the 402 fiduciary. I can't understand it. I wish someone could explain that to me. Why someone would take on that kind of liability? Where we just started this webinar talking about the average fine is $600,000, and 75% of plans investigated by the Department of Labor have to own up. Well, the council, of course, emphasizes that outsourcing cannot relieve the plan sponsor of all fiduciary obligations. Remember, when we take these 164 items in our forgotten fiduciary, and if you're not using that, that is powerful. It's powerful. That's one of those epiphanies that just has defined what we do. And we take everything away except 6 of them. And we say, we can't take away from you the right to hire, monitor, and terminate us. We can't take away from you the right to hire, monitor, and terminate your employees who become participants. We can't or won't take away from you the right to hire and terminate your service providers. We'll help you monitor them. We can't take away from you the necessity of doing payroll. We can't, which is part of the plan, we can't take away from you the necessity of making the contribution on a timely and accurate basis. We can't take that away from you, so we don't, but where we can take away all but 3% of those 164 duties, what a remarkable thing, and you're going to see here how powerful it is, so stay with me. This is again from the Advisory Council, the heart of outsourcing arrangement. The service provider contract is at the heart of all outsourcing arrangements. This is why we just saw John Hancock just came out with 316 services. Now, by the way, if any of you get that, I want to read it. I'll guarantee you if it's been the past, it'll be full of smoke and mirrors. Maybe I'm wrong. But you have to read that contract. Yesterday, with this multi-million-dollar plan that advisor, his heart was so big, and he was so proud of the report provided by the record keeper. But you have to now look and see the games that are being played. It is much more than just a legal document for allocating risk among parties. The contract represents an opportunity to create a roadmap. This is why we take so much time to go through these 164 items in our contract and then show them the few they're left with, and they nod their head saying, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I can see you can't take that over. And then showing them who becomes the primary fiduciary for the rest of those 158. That contract is a way for you to sell, because we in writing are saying we're taking that away from you. So moving on here. Now, this one is tricky, but it is so important that you see this. It's just so vital. So I want to go over it rather slowly, because I want to make sure you understand something, and we had to read it more than once. This comes under RISA 405. Now, let me tell you why you want to know this. When you look at a plan, an ERISA plan, every ERISA plan in America, there are 3 optional fiduciaries that aren't required. ERISA 338, ERISA 321A III, and ERISA 408G. Those are optional fiduciaries to the plan. Most don't have them. But every plan must have 3 fiduciaries. Every plan in America. And you as the TPA put it in their document. Now, I know you borrowed the document from, F.T. Williams or whoever. But there are 3 fiduciaries. Name fiduciary, 402. Legal fiduciary, 316. Money fiduciary, 403. But note what ERISA 405 says, and you've got to read it pretty carefully. Addresses the allocation notice the word, of fiduciary responsibilities that are not trustee responsibilities. Why? Sometimes people ask us, well, why aren't you also the 403 trustee? Well, the easy answer is, well, we're not the bank, or we're not an insurance company. But that's not really the answer. The answer is, by law, we can't be. So that's why a record keeper that is a trustee also, they can't be a 402 fiduciary because 405C says they can't. 405C says the addressing, the allocation means 402, remember, of fiduciary responsibilities that are not trustee responsibilities. This is from the Welfare Council. It provides the plan document may include procedures for allocating fiduciary responsibilities, quote, other than trustee responsibilities among named fiduciaries. Notice the word allocating. They're talking about named fiduciaries. And for named fiduciaries to designate persons other than named fiduciaries to carry out fiduciary duties other than trustee responsibilities. Now, I want to go to the next page quickly because I want to go on here. Now, this is where they're now addressing trustee. Under ERISA 403, unlike 404C, applies to trustee responsibilities. It provides that except under limited circumstances, a plan's assets are to be held in trust by one or more trustees. Okay, fine. Now let's read the next part. A trustee has the exclusive authority and discretion to manage and control the assets, blah, 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 and are subject to the direction of the named fiduciary who is not a trustee. Let's go down the bottom here. The term investment manager is defined in ERISA 338. And, okay, I'm going to, wait, don't go to that yet. This is important for you 338s. This is from the Advisory Council. So if anyone asks you, well, why isn't fiduciary doctors the trustee? Well, one answer is we're not a bank or a savings loan, but the other answer is under 405C, you can't be. You can't be the trustee. Why? Well, because you have such power as the 402. If you were also the trustee, the money trustee, you could take money out and there's no checks and balances. That's why we're not the trustee. Now, I want to go to the bottom of it for you 338s. Here's from the Advisory Council. Some of you will ask me sometime, you'll say, well, how powerful is a 338? I say, it's one of only two exculpatory provisions in ERISA, one being 402, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. Here's what it says. In the event of an appointment under 402C3, the named fiduciary, we're going to pick up the 403 later. The named fiduciary is not liable for the acts or omission of the investment manager. So long, that should be long. I always appreciate you guys being kind to me here. Oops, let me go back. So long as it was prudent in selecting and retaining and retaining the investment manager. For all of you 338s out here, ERISA says that if you do your job and we, as the 402 independent fiduciary or the plan sponsor, as the defaulted 402, then we are not liable for your acts. How powerful that is. That's the only time that occurs. And so all we have to do is make sure we're selecting and monitoring you. If we find you're not doing your job any longer, well, we no longer get that protection. But until then, we continue to get that protection under 338. Okay, now moving along here. This is powerful for you. I had a call yesterday. You'd think yesterday everything occurred, but some days are just more exciting and fruitful than others. We're going to send this to you, but make sure you look at Interpretive Bulletin 75-8, because this is about ministerial agents. I had a call yesterday from someone that says, well, if we fill out these orange templates, are we becoming fiduciaries? And I said, well, no, because you didn't invent those. You didn't invent those orange templates. You have no right to alter them. You have no right to add to them or subtract from them. And under Interpretive Bulletin 75-8, it states that a person who performs purely ministerial functions within the framework of policy, procedures, and rules developed by others are not fiduciaries. That's why we call you MAs, ministerial agents. The rationale of this conclusion is that the person lacks the requisite authority and discretion or control to make him or her a fiduciary. Then I said to the person yesterday, the only way you could get in trouble is not becoming a fiduciary unless you alter our papers. It's if you are dishonest. But if you're not dishonest, you don't become a fiduciary. We are the fiduciary. You're just filling out papers. I don't say just as not important. Just like you take, again, I'll take F.T. Williams. You take their document. You don't create the document. You fill it out. What are you doing? You're doing Interpretive Bulletin 75-8. You're a ministerial agent. So let's go on to see what the Advisory Council says here. ERISA only requires the fiduciary performance duties in accordance with fiduciary duties under ERISA. Well, okay, that's pretty obvious. Thus, if the name fiduciary is prudent, remember, name fiduciary 402, in its hiring and retention of service providers, that means everyone else, ERISA may be interpreted provided the fiduciary, meaning the plan fiduciary, is not liable to the plan for any losses that incur by reason of the service provider's actions. What are we doing to that plan sponsor? We are going in, this is the second exculpatory exemption. We're saying to that plan sponsor, it is our job to monitor all other service providers. If a loss occurs, you are not liable. If the service provider is a fiduciary, the participants can bring a cause of action against the fiduciary, meaning against us. However, if the provider is not a fiduciary, remember, 95% of investment professionals are not fiduciaries. However, if the provider is not a fiduciary, the participant will unlikely have any cause of action against ERISA, under ERISA against the service provider. So this interpretive bulletin is a powerful blessing. Now again, going on to Interpretive Bulletin 75-8. It goes on to say, but at reasonable intervals, the performance of the trustee and other fiduciaries, notice how they divide out the trustee. Why? Because ERISA 405C. The trustee who holds the money and other fiduciaries, 402 and 316, should be reviewed by the appointed fiduciary. That's the 402. In such manner as may be reasonably expected to ensure that their performance has been in compliance with the terms of the plan statutory standards. And what does that mean? Well, it means that you get protection in the plan as long as you are monitored and properly selected and satisfies the needs of the plan. Then they go on and say, well, no single procedure will be appropriate in all cases. But that's why we monitor. That's why we have these PAC meetings. So that, because ERISA is all about procedural prudence, the process, and is it prudent? And that's why we have analysts record the meeting and then type up the minutes, including the plan of action, because we're recording the procedural process. So, in a letter by Diana Cessese, the Department of Labor says, fiduciaries need not select the lowest bidder when soliciting bids, although the fiduciary must ensure that the compensation paid to the service provider is reasonable, 408B2. Less than 1% of plans do 408B2. The financial industry has not embraced 408B2. That alone, and refusing to do 408B2, the Department of Labor, we've talked about this, is investigating under 406B, meaning they're turning over to the Treasury the disqualification of the plan. As I talked to the CPA auditors yesterday, I said, do you know that all of your plans statistically should be disqualified? and will be in time, because now they have the workforce to go out and do it. Now, who's going to be blamed for that? Who's going to be blamed for that disqualification? Who do they believe are the fiduciaries? Who has led them to think they're a fiduciary, or at least has been silent on it? It should be noted because of the quality of service is a factor, so it's not just reasonableness, it's quality of service in the selection of a service provider. Failure to do so is a breach of fiduciary responsibility. Well, now we're going to Field Assistant Bulletin 2007-1. I apologize having to go rather quickly, but this is so powerful. So this Field Assistant Bulletin 2007-1, it addresses the application of ERISA standards for the selection and monitoring of investment advisors for participants and beneficiaries. The department provided additional factors to be considered. The experience and qualification of the investment advisor. As I talked to the CP auditors yesterday, do you have any idea how many plans? What's the experience? What's the qualification of these advisors? Or the willingness of the advisor to assume fiduciary status? 95% of them aren't doing that under ERISA. And so that is a violation of ERISA. We'll talk more about this in 2 weeks. Then finally, let's go to this. Benchmarking and performance. Again, well, I don't say finally, but moving on here. A key component of selecting and retaining is the relative qualifications of the different service providers. Now, I will say to you all as TPAs, I love you, I love you, I love you, but they think you're a fiduciary. And I can tell you that if problems occur, they're going to turn to you and say, well, I thought you were a fiduciary and taking care of this. It is in your best interest. You may, okay, you may not agree with all of it. You may not agree with me, but I'm telling you, it's in your best interest. You may think, well, that's lining our pockets. But it's in your best interest to go to every plan and say, you're the 402. This is what it means. You can stay there or not. You're the 316. This is what it means. You can stay there or not. You're the 403. You can stay there or not. The service providers, you have to vet them. You must do this. You have to do the 408B2. You have to do these things or you have disqualification of the plan or serious problems. And, oh, by the way, we're not a fiduciary. I'd get every client on the phone and make it mandatory to do a webcast if I were you. Well, now they're changing gears. I find this kind of interesting. For those of you that haven't got involved in MEP plans, we have 7 or 8 of them. The Advisory Council is saying a MEP plan, and they define what it is, what a MEP plan is. We won't take time on that. But then they say, we believe that MEPs, including open MEPs, may provide help, may prove to be helpful in increasing retirement plan coverage. Did you know of our 8 MEPs, and maybe it's 9, maybe it's 7, I don't know what it is. Did you know on an average we save them over 70 basis points a year? 70 basis points even after putting our fee in. The council believes that MEP structures have merit, and the Department of Labor should consider how to facilitate them. Now, the only really issue, for those of you who have read negative stuff, the only really issue the Department of Labor has is the filing of 15500. But if you don't do that, and if you do your fiduciary obligations like we do it properly, no harm, no foul. But they're coming in saying, look, DOL, you under ERISA 512 have give us the right to give you advice. You can take it or leave it. But we're telling you, you need to allow MEPs to occur. You need to figure out the problem. And as you well know, we've had discussion on MEPs, and it goes way back to health benefits, not to true retirement benefits. So this is, we come to the end of the Department of Labor Advisory Council on Employee Welfare and Pension Benefit Plans. The report to the Honorable Thomas E. Perez, United States Secretary of Labor, called Outsourcing Employee Benefit Plans. After going through this, there's no issue. Can you outsource by allocating the 402 fiduciary? Absolutely. Should it be done? Absolutely. Should you vet all, should the 402 then vet all other service providers? Absolutely. What's the results? Efficiency. Remember, our average plan saves about 38 basis points. Quality and safety. So that's our presentation for today. I want now, please, if you'll stay on just another minute, we're almost at the top of the hour here. I want to see if there's any questions that you might have. Would you like these slides?
Yes, Don.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You will send that to
Correct
you.
the typos though, okay? Like the safe harbors at the bottom.
Oh, you smart.
You really know how to put that dagger in there, don't you?
I can tell you everyone will get the slides but one person in the city in Colorado.
Okay, send it to me and I'll change it.
There's one smart aleck in Colorado that will not receive these. Okay, no, seriously, Deb, I know you mean. I'm going to send this to you and have you read it over because you're better at finding mistakes than I am. So we meaning Deb will clean it up and send it back. We'll send it to everyone. But regardless of the typos, there's a lot of meat in this. Do you guys agree? I mean, there's a lot of meat in this. A lot of meat.
Absolutely.
So, and so I know your family, and when we meet every 2 weeks, we're a family, and I'm kind of saying to you, I'm saying I love you, but you, every one of your, so I hear some of you say, well, we let the plan sponsor know where we think they need it. Well, tell me a plan sponsor that has any idea how that they're the 402 and what it means. I mean, I'm just looking for the answer to that question. I mean, everyone ought to hear this, and they can say no, but they ought to hear it. That's how powerful this is, what we're doing here. They're not going to have me be the typist for the Department of Labor, but that's not, that's not my job. My job is to look at 164 diagnostic procedures and not have you become a fiduciary in doing it. Now, you may believe you're a fiduciary, you may want to be a fiduciary, but we're not going to make you be a fiduciary. That's all I'm saying. Other questions, comments?
Don, this is Dick Billings, and just for the purpose of the group, I know you mentioned earlier about your example of an advisor who had goodness in his heart, but didn't have the expertise relative to investments. And I just wanted to speak in support of that, and that I had Don, or Fiduciary Doctors, has one case in particular, and that's exactly what he found, is that the advisor was a nice guy and knew the plan sponsor well and all that good stuff, but did not know investments. And after Don's discussion with him, and of course obviously the reporting and what have you, benchmarking, was quite appreciative of bringing that to his attention.
And didn't embarrass him in any way. We have no desire for that person to be terminated. We started.
Right. So I know there's advisors out there to say, well, golly, if Fiduciary Doctors is quote unquote looking over my shoulder, what am I doing? Well, first of all, I think it's a good thing for us all to have an expert fiduciary looking over our shoulder and helping us retain cases. But I think there's plenty of room for the advisor to quote unquote to share the glory. And I think Don does a good job of not saying, hey, you don't need an advisor, just use us. Of course not. And if the advisor is just simply willing to keep an open mind.
Thank you, Dick. You have such positive things to say. My heart was just crushed a moment ago by another comment, but thank you for lifting me.
Somebody's got to keep you going.
I see that pink slip coming.
Not until you correct our errors. Okay. No, we don't embarrass someone. We don't. We believe investment professionals have, like mushrooms, been kept in the dark. We believe that once they see the light, they'll never be different. That they will be the better for it. Yes, there's the bad apples out there, but very, very few. As we, for those of you, we have about 4 more minutes. Please bear with me. For those of you that weren't on earlier, I spoke to 15 CPA auditors yesterday, maybe 16 or 17, about why they want to incorporate Title I into their practice. We got invited. We're hopefully get invited to talk to the peer review board out of California that does Arizona and do a program for them. Where another came up who's a member of the AICP of the state of Arizona wants to get us on the which is the second time we've been asked on the state convention, and then also work up a 6 to 8 hour training class on what to look for under Title I for CPA auditors. We're going to talk about this 2 weeks from now. What I presented to them, it's going to be very eye-opening to you. It was very eye-opening to them, and we can present this to the CPA auditors in your cities, which is a wonderful opportunity for us. I want you to know that I appreciate each of you. For those of you who are on later, I did give an update on John and